The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hello and welcome to the show. As you can probably hear, this is not Christine Hart. It's Taj covering for Christine today. Unfortunately, Christine isn't well, so I'm going to be covering the show for the next 2 hours. This was going to be a pilot for a show that I'm going to do with Sarah Adams. Unfortunately, Sarah is not feeling well today, but we have another guest, Daniel, who has been working with Sarah quite closely doing her video blogs. So I'm just going to bring him on now, if you just give me a second. Okay. Hi Daniel, are you there?
Hello Taj, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you fine, yeah. How are you today?
Well, very well, thank you for having me with you today. It's good to connect with you and doing well.
Yeah, I was just explaining to the listening audience that Sarah couldn't make it today because she's not feeling well. I know she spoke to you earlier briefly and asked you to do the show in her place.
Well, I'm wishing her a quick recovery and apologize to anyone that was really looking forward to anything that she was going to be sharing, but hopefully I can do what I can to honor what she may have talked about with anything you'd like to discuss, Taj, and so I'm honored to be here with you and looking forward to getting to talk with you here.
Okay, I know you've been working with Sarah on her video blogs. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that. I know you did one recently with Jim Mars, and I was wondering if there's any other projects or blogs that she's planning on doing in the coming weeks that we can talk about.
Sure. Well, it was really great being able to get with Jim. He's a good friend of mine. And for those that may not be too familiar, Jim Mars is a renowned and internationally known author and journalist of many different topics. And so you've probably, heard of him or seen him at some point at maybe a lecture or conference, but he speaks on many alternative issues. And he was privy to some of the instances that happened back in July for those that know anything about Sarah and everything that she was involved with. And so we had been interested in getting together with her, finding that she moved back over to this side of the pond, so to speak, in Texas for a while, which is where we are. And we thought it would be great to be able to get with her and really do an investigation and interview her on a number of different topics, but nothing too inquisitive, doing it mostly informally. So it was a really fun time. I think it was enlightening for everyone, and we covered a lot of ground, but essentially it was something that was meant to be somewhat generic as to establish a coherent basis for all the other potential segments that we could be doing, which would feature a number of different topics and different matters that Sarah really seems to be connected with, and of course likes to be involved with in some active way.
Okay. What are some of the other topics that you'll be covering in the blogs?
Well, getting to know Sarah a little bit more on a personal basis, I think is kind of interesting because there's a lot of videos that for people, of course, other than such as yourself, Taj, you've been able to connect with Sarah in person, have known her for some time, and you've probably been more privy to a lot of the information that's kind of been produced and gone around with her in it lately. A lot of videos on YouTube at different events and things like that. And of course, a lot of the work that you've done people get to know her on a more personal basis and can see some of the things that she likes to, work in. And I think that it was a good way for her to have an avenue to speak in a non-invasive way that was, I think, too sensitive about, getting into the issues regarding her involvement with Max and things like that. So there's a lot of clarification, I think, that she lent on some subjects, leading up to, this point and everything, which I think is just essentially what we did for this first segment with Jim, was to establish, like we were saying, a sort of basis to which anyone that would be able to see the direction of the segments thereon could allow for them to have a sort of background with what she's been involved with and sort of the work that she's looking to do now, and or that she has been really, but is just looking to kind of renew and be able to produce in a way that might be effective for people near and far. And so there are a lot of issues that we covered about being multidimensional and how that can be applied in a practical and effective way with utilizing your skills and the abilities that you have to connect and tune in to the realms that you need to in order to be able to be effective and sustaining yourself and honoring your craft and others. And so we discussed some of the intentional jewelry that she and her aunt has been really working to put together, and it's something that I'm not too sure how many the listeners would be familiar with her jewelry or anything that she's been working on and crafting, but she's basically been able to use this as a creative skill set that helps her to sustain herself in a way that is honorable, and it's something that can be a practical way of utilizing energy and utilizing your own spiritual experience in a practical way. And it's really great because this is just one of the, I'd say what you could describe as the dimensions of being multidimensional, is being able to apply these things to practical skill sets that we can utilize throughout our network of community that we have here. And it's really great because you're so I'm sitting here in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas, way across the pond from you there, Taj. And I have to presume that you're in the UK. You're in England.
That's right. Yeah, I'm in Reading, in the UK. It's not too far from London.
So
not too far from London.
That's really exciting to hear. I've never actually been able to go there. I'd love to, of course. I feel connected in many ways, and it's something I'd love to experience. But it's just great to be able to have the connection with you here now, and a lot of the community that you interact with there as well, to be able to interact on such a wide basis. I think is great to connect with you about this, and so that she, Sarah, can have a sense of support through where she's been for quite a while there, and the work that she's done, and in a way that, with what's happened now, or moving over to Dallas, that there's some transparency. People can still see that she's looking to utilize her skills and basically find a sense of direction with being multidimensional in a way that can be shared with others in an effective way to make practical and utilize. So we're looking to make segments on issues like health, nutrition, wellness, basically advocating, a wellness-oriented lifestyle, and how to utilize higher energy, upward frequency type interactions, whether it's with what you're eating, what kind of setting you're interacting with, or different things like that, and how that really helps us understand a greater sense of being multidimensional overall, and having a greater awareness of the environment around us and of ourselves as well.
Yeah, I guess that all plays into the multidimensional aspects of Sarah's life, really, and that's it's all to do with the health, diet, detoxing, looking after yourself, as well as a lot of the other stuff that Sarah does, her healing work and readings and everything else, and keeping her energy up. And I mean, it's been difficult for her over the last few months, obviously, and I think she's looking to move towards concentrating on work and her business. And I know she's also talked about some of the charity work she wants to do with the homeless. I don't know if she's discussed any of that with you at all.
Sure, I think it's again, it's one of the potential areas that I think can be utilized as this a prong, I guess you could say, to the pen of being multidimensional. It's something that here in our area is an active issue at hand. I know in many places it doesn't really seem too severe or of really, just a threatening kind of concept to most people that aren't really seem to be affected by that. But really, it is a very prominent issue in societies around, and so we have to look at it in a way that is proactive. And of course, let's say the conceptualization of being involved with the homeless and allowing community to be proactive and pursuing righteous endeavors that help to allow for food and clothing and donations and all of these different things, services to accommodate for everyone in the community. And so, of course, we've discussed how allowing for opportunities to delve into the lifestyles of what's going on, and if any case here, and the diversity that you can experience in levels of economic consistency, whether it's people living in nice apartments or something, or people living under what a lot of people consider tent city, which for those that don't really know, was an area in Dallas that most homeless concentrated areas, end up being these sort of nomadic gatherings of people that kind of establish this tent city, and it happens to be under different highways and things like that. That really isn't necessarily the safest thing, but then again, they're doing everything they can. And so there's been many great efforts made to make sure that everyone in the community is given opportunities and some things that might not have been offered in other circumstances. And so it's unfortunate because sometimes through authority and things like that, you'll have tent cities removed, and it's really unfortunate because it really exposes the dynamic clash in economic consistency in just a small concentrated area. And so you have to do what you can proactively. And so we're featuring segments that really help to allow her to lend perspective through sharing it, let's say through a sort of video exposure to where other people can experience it by that degree and get gain insight into the nature of what can be done, bring awareness to it, exactly, and then be able to show what can be done in a practical way to help do what we can and to contribute in some sense how to make practical one of these aspects of our dimensionality. And so that's really important, is that we have to make sure that the collective community that we're a part of is compensated. It's looked after. It's something that isn't neglected because it affects all of us, and it's something that most people shun and stray away from if they can at any chance. And unfortunately, when people do that, they're neglecting a greater part of themselves overall, and how it affects essentially a more significant part of their lives. Whether they, I think, consciously are aware of that or not, it's important. So we're bringing awareness to that matter, and that's a big area of focus that she seems to be expressive of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand. Are you going to be covering any? I don't know if Sarah's got any events planned or conferences that she may be attending in the coming weeks and months. Are you going to be doing any blogs on any events and her activities over the next couple of months as well?
Well, there are actually a lot of great events going on around the area, and I often travel to many different places that and have a lot of different functions taking place. Sarah happens to be in the Dallas area where we're holding the Holistic Festival of Life and Wellness just later this weekend, and it's going to be a huge event, thousands of people. It's interesting to think a lot of people might not get the impression that in old, Dallas, Texas, you might have a holistic festival of life and wellness where it's completely oriented in spiritual practices and just wellness oriented arts and services that cover a full spectrum um, of arts. And so it's really pretty amazing, a lot of what goes into an event like this. But she will actually be offering some of her jewelry there as well. But it's a great opportunity to have her experience some of the local events and community in this area, and to find that it's something I think is really consciously uplifting to find a community to help support what you feel called to be able to do, and have something that resonates with your path in life. And so I think that's something that she's really excited about. And of course, with being in a great area like the Plano Convention Center, which is where this event will be held, there's going to be people throughout the whole building from a wide variety of backgrounds that utilize energy, that are energy practitioners, they're readers, they work in divination, they they invoke the divine through their own way in an immense variety of arts. And it's just a blessing to be able to interact in a way that I think community promotes. And so it's something that we're really excited about. But that's just, of course, that's coming up here very soon. So we're looking to utilize that to potentially have a segment where we can really advocate wellness and advocate health, and in a way that it's more conscious in people's lives, because that's, I think, key and a foundational element to anything that you get into, and in a way that I think really helps to clear the lens of perception in all matters. Is when you're in wellness, when you're in a state of alignment and well-being, spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally, however, it's something that we really connect with. And if we're not feeling well in any of those, it essentially will affect our perception in any other realm or discipline or dimension that we are attempting to be active within. And so it's really awesome to have an opportunity like this where we're going to go in, connect with a lot of people. There's going to be a lot of really amazing artists and shaman, medicine people, a lot of great energy workers and speakers and yogis, and just a number of different diverse disciplines that allow for people to be consciously proactive in their life. And so I think that with Sarah looking to enact upon her multidimensional advocacy, it's really important to be proactive in that. And when you're in a situation that doesn't allow you that, when you can't effectively apply it in a way that's tangible, it really becomes suppressing, and it's something that you might feel really and ends up being neglected. And so it's important, I think, for all of our endeavors to be honored in a way that, whether society might not really feel connected to what you're really doing or what your calling is in life or what you're connected to, because we're socially engineered to think that certain values in life are supposed to be honored over others and things like that. But really what we feel innately called to, I think, should be respected in any regard in society. And so when we allow for this to happen, it's something that is really exciting to see. And so I think it's a great opportunity to go this weekend to share about the wellness of our community and of our whole being through a variety of different practices and variety of medicines. And that can be energy medicine, it can be food medicine, stone medicine, water medicine, and all of these different things. Stones are really interesting as well because they carry a specific lattice or frequency that allows for the energetic properties of a stone to be very effective and allowing some kind of connection to be felt and experienced with people. And so it's really a big proponent of what she's working on as well. So having segments on intentional stones, intentional pendants, intentional jewelry that's made with crystals and gemstones that all have various properties, both physical and metaphysical. And so that's something that she's really excited to be able to utilize as well. And so her family really has been working in a great way to help produce some various ornamental works and other pieces of what are known as orgon or orgonite, which are very interesting for those who aren't too familiar with that.
Mm.
They can look into William Reich. He had a lot to do with orgon energy and how that came about into our modern culture. And so it's something that a lot of people are making now, which are essentially energetic diffusers, and you can utilize them for various purposes, whether it's to help radiate a certain electromagnetic frequency or maybe diffuse a frequency and sort of buffer it. And so a lot of people will wear orgon pendants. They will make orgon stones or different pieces that can be mounted onto furniture and things like that, basically to help buffer electromagnetic radiation.
Yeah.
And that's something that is a big part of everything we experience is through those frequencies. And so we're bombarded with those frequencies all the time. And it's really important to be aware of that because it's something you can't see with your physical eyes. And of course, that's what most people try to use to take in their scope of reality. So it's really unfortunate the way that society has been sort of degenerate in a way that we've succumbed to this idea that everything is materialistic and that nothing seen beyond the line of sight can be considered. And so it's something that we forget that, things like electromagnetic frequencies and radiation from all kinds of devices that we use, just like right now on our call, it's something that's taking place.
Mm.
And so we're susceptible to that. And we need to make sure that we're protected in some tangible way. And one of the great things that you can do is have orgonite. And so, of course, this is another, I think, aspect that you could say is a multidimensional art. It's a discipline that you can utilize to help as a form of technology in some way that you can protect yourself from being susceptible to, these cancerous forms of radiation and things that really probably aren't very good for us as, just being submersed in a realm of, electromagnetic frequency that's synthetic and things like that. And so there's a lot of issues that we're really looking to delve into. And we've kind of got an outline, a basic format of allowing for the multidimensional theme to be present throughout, as every segment basically features a certain episodic area topic.
I think most people don't see beyond like the, I guess the 3D reality. They think that this is the physical reality is all there is. And so to make people more aware and educate them, like Sarah speaks about multidimensional work. It's all incorporated in that to I guess the only way of putting it is to wake people up to these other aspects of reality. I guess people are stuck in the concept that the 3D reality is all there is, and trying to teach people and educate them that there is more beyond the 3D world that we see and hear and breathe. Can be difficult, but I know Sarah is very good at doing what she does in that aspect anyway.
Yeah, so I think it's really important to consider what she offers, and I think it touches something in a lot of people that helps to understand that they are multidimensional as well, and it's something that they can connect with in a sense that allows them to connect and allows them to experience that multidimensionality through their own consciousness. And that's a beautiful thing because many people interact multidimensionally in different ways, and it might not be, they might not be conscious of it, but it's something that I think we have an ability to connect with, and she's really looking to help for people to be more aware of that we can utilize our connection to spirit, to the divine, to whatever you'd like to attribute to it. It's something that our inherent nature allows us to be in tune with, but society has sort of gone in many different obstructive directions that keep us from almost really being able to have a clear channel with that connection. And it's something that I think could be considered intentional, and I think that there's a big issue with that as well, which she's an advocate of is in some sense. And we find that there are a lot of things that have really been socially engineered, you could say, in a way that advocate a very atrocious lifestyle that really is one that does not have any honorable sort of notion. And it's not necessarily just that it has to be honorable, but are you honoring yourself in the involvement of something that is degrading to your overall well-being? And it's something you have to really ask yourself and be conscious of, because so many people actively choose, every time they do something that is destructive to them, that might be an aversion to their well-being, to their spiritual or even physiological well-being. I think it's really important that we consider on all levels what's all being affected in a holistic manner. And that's something that a lot of people aren't considerate of, is they just think that it might be just doing this, or it might just only have this side effect. But really, with all things considered, being consciously aware of your multidimensionality is key in all matters. And so I think that when we can awaken to a more open sense of perception in that manner, it affects all other avenues of our life, of our multidimensionality, and we can be proactive in helping to advocate by catalyzing that effect in others, and advocating wellness, advocating light practice, and so that we can see that we are actualizing that, we are embodying that. And so it's something that we maintain in a sense that helps to portray a model for well-being. And that's really important, I think, for people to be able to utilize as a catalyst. And so when we have the opportunity to go to different events and share about information, it's important to maintain that people receiving the information are going to be doing so through a filtered lens, whatever their preconceived notions are, whether they might agree, disagree, if they resonate with it or not, anything. And so it's really important to portray a clear, coherent, and effective message in a way that can generate enough effectiveness to the broadest amount of people through any demographic. And it's really important to also be considerate of younger people and younger generations, and people coming out of adolescence into an adult world that they're not really prepared for. It's really important that we allow the opportunity of the younger generations as well, the information that they can utilize and that we can utilize, and everyone that really seeks to make this world a better place for all of us. It's really important that we are considerate about how we can actively do that, and how we can look to see what's inherently within us and how we can actualize that in our waking physical lives as well, to embody all spectrums of our multidimensionality in a practical centered way. And I think it's
Yeah.
really about embodying that all together and actualizing that. And so that's really important, I think, to keep in mind when we're doing any of these segments about health, nutrition, jewelry, active, stone work. And people might think that using crystals and gemstones might sound a bit odd, but you can find that much of ancient stonework was enormously embedded with quartz. It's extremely conductive. It's something that is used in modern machinery now as energy conductors and memory conduits, and it's something that we just kind of laugh off as a society of people, looking around into crystal balls and things of this nature. It just seems like a joke, but
Yeah.
it's really kind of incredible to consider. Well, maybe there's something to it. Maybe if you hold an enormous quartz crystal orb in your hand for not even a whole minute, you'll begin to find why I think it's been such an enigmatic part of human history. And of course, it's very primordial. It's very grounding. A stone, it's something that is part of, it's not an iPhone, it's not a computer, it's not anything that's uh, temporal. It's literally part of the primordial essence that's in us all, and so you get to connect with that. That's one of the most grounding things I think that you can really humble yourself with, is really just to connect with a an incredible stone that you feel connected with. And you can find that there's this whole spectrum in the mineral kingdom of various stones and many different types of um, minerals and composites and these different things that have a vast array of frequencies that allow for different things to happen, even metallic alloys and things like this. So we're considering how that comes into play upon contact, upon area of effect, upon ingestion. You have to be considered when as a complete whole being, that when interacting physically, it's not just affecting you physically, because there's an energetic property behind that physicality, behind the materialistic properties of a substance, and lie the frequencies which make up the chemical compounds, which make up the material that we eat as food, we drink as beverages, that we interact with in all things. And that through that atomization, we find that certain frequencies are inherent in our own physiological makeup, and that we require them to replenish, and that we also take on many different frequencies that help us to sustain our own sort of life frequency, our own heartbeat, and so it's something that it's you have to be considerate of it on all realms. And I think it's really important that there's a therapeutic approach in what some people might not really consider as being an important aspect in someone's life, whereas it might be the mundane or something of that nature. It allows for them to be able to connect in a way that's therapeutic, that allows for that to be the greatest mode of connection that person might be able to have, because that's simply what they've grown to experience in their life. And so a lot of people are inconsiderate that, even though people seem like they're doing or are thinking or are involved with some like really nonsensical issues or ways of life and things, that it might not really mean anything, but in some sense it's sort of a placebo and enacts this sort of vessel for them to connect as a form of Zen as well. So it's really kind of interesting to consider that all people have their own form of medicine, whether it's one thing or another. But I think we do have a basis for what we can tell is a sort of range of frequency, and we can look through that by finding ranges of hertz and ranges of frequencies that you can basically describe through translation as what I like to say is music and color. I have a background in music, and so I like to think that all things we interact with are forms of music, but in various forms, and those are just frequencies, as all things are frequencies. And so it's really important, I think, through multidimensionality, we utilize what frequencies uh, serve us, and that what frequencies we can serve as well. And so it's something that I think is really important when you consider things like your health, utilizing maybe stones, maybe other things like aromatherapy, maybe utilizing natural herbs and things like essential oils. These are really uh, great forms of medicine that work for many different, diverse array of ailments or other issues, and it's something that has really been with us from a very early age as well. And I think it's really incredible to utilize what kind of medicines we find are often ridiculed in fields of homeopathy and of naturopathy, where we're utilizing natural forms of medicine. We're utilizing energy work. It's really important to focus on, bringing this to the forefront, because without the awareness, people won't really know how to actively uh, do anything with it, and it's just something that ends up becoming a sort of parody in this scheme of um, the public eye and media for the most part. And so you have to be considerate about how to go about doing it in a purposeful way. It's there's some intention to it, but it's also not going to succumb to ridicule just as a complete nonsensical issue. I think it's important to understand that it's great to be able to humble yourself with the notion that we're sharing collectively as a community, a collective group of entities here that are looking to work in cooperation to fulfill this alignment. And it's really incredible to be able to work with community in a way that allows for this sense of compassion to really emerge, and that's what's really important. I think that has to come through the entirety of anything that we're working on. And so when we're able to do segments with Sarah, I think it's important for her to utilize her abilities in a way that showcase some of the arts that she's and disciplines that she's advocating.
Mm. Yeah, I think the whole sort of multidimensional aspect of her work is very interesting, because she's talked to me about before you can do anything like energy work or anything like that, you have to work on your diet, you have to detox, and you have to get your energy up to a certain level before I mean, most people are in a way already, they have some of these abilities like psychic abilities, sixth sense, whatever you want to call it. But to tune those sort of abilities, you first have to work on your diet and that aspect, really. Daniel, are you there? I think I've lost you a minute. I think we've lost Daniel. Are you back? Hello?
Taj, you there?
Are you back? Oh, sorry. Yeah,
I think so. I don't know what happened. I'm sorry about that.
You just cut off. I was just saying, talking about the multidimensional aspect of Sarah's work is interesting, because she talks about, things like everyone has these abilities, psychic abilities and sixth sense and what do you want to call it. But to tune these abilities, you need to first work on your health, your diet. You have to detox, take supplements, because a lot of the food you're eating has no nutrition and no value to it. And so to be able to do the energy work, you have to first work on your diet and your health first to build up your energy, your frequency to a level where you can actually do some good. I suppose you'll be covering a lot of that as well in the blogs.
Yes, I think it's important to note because, and can you hear me all right, by the way?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's something that is a topic of interest because we have uh, been able to have some interaction over issues regarding food and nutrition, and of course supplements and many other things that we consume. It's something I find really interesting because when we're dealing with the nature of consumption, it's such an amorphous concept in the Western culture because people are not conscious of eating whatsoever. I mean, there are, I should say, of course, many people are actually, but and for the most part, it just seems like people are unconscious consumers of anything and everything, and it's just not just physically, of course, energetically as well. And it's important to acknowledge that, and that's the biggest thing I think we are oblivious to as a culture is that we forget that we are not just physical consumers, that we are also energetic consumers as well. And people will really feed off of energy in as much as they do feed off of, physical interaction or stimulation as well. So it's really important to be considerate of that because when we're talking about the nature of consumption and the intake energetically that we need and the intake physically that we need, we have to see that there's a connection there, and that everything that we eat, everything that we consume, that we ingest, is all a form of frequency that will affect our overall well-being, physically, emotionally, mentally, everything. It's really important to keep that in mind. Most people aren't. They don't think about when they go through the drive-through and gulp down some, huge cheeseburgers and stuff, and that's just fine for some people, but really you have to be considerate that a lot of the frequencies that we ingest, not just what they are, but how they're made, the properties that they undergo through production, because most people don't realize in a lot of the westernized cultures, we don't eat food as a whole. I speak as just the majority populace, but it's not food, it's essentially food products. It's something that's a food product that's been manufactured through preserved means, and it's unfortunate because most people aren't conscious of that, and we need to raise awareness in a way that not only awakens people in a way that's the kind of reality we live in, but it's really about what can you do, what can we really make effective about that, rather than trying to just shock it into people that it's frightening to think that all the food that we're getting is really bad. All the environments that we're having to deal with are very tumultuous, and that there's a lot of interesting things going on in our overall environment of what we're receiving. And some people like to speculate on things like inoculations and chemtrails and weather modification. I think those are all very interesting things. I think I probably, most people are probably dismissive of it, and they think conspiracy theories and things like that. But I think most people aren't even considerate of it more than
you can't really
that.
you can't really do anything about those. You can't you can protect yourself to a certain degree, but I think working on yourself is the most important thing rather than worrying about the chemtrails and the food. I mean, if you're you can't be a multidimensional person while you're eating a cheeseburger. You have to. It's like a lifestyle change, really. To become multidimensional, you have to take it on as a lifestyle, really, don't you?
Well, I think so, and I think that in any case, having a cheeseburger, if that's really what someone wants to do, which I don't in particular, but I think that that's something that they're consciously aware of. They interact with that, and in some way, to say either that it's good or bad, I think is, again, it's one of the things that ends up being just a form of happenstance, and we interact with it, and we consciously interact with those vibrations, and we might do a lot of that subconsciously, but it's also something many people do consciously interact with, and that's something that takes place in many different ways. But that it's interesting to see what we are able to utilize in working with Sarah to the degree that we're able to apply it effectively. So there's a lot of conceptualization that we're looking to make practical and make some kind of tangible production out of that you can watch and see. When we're going to different events, she might like to interact with some of the people. There's just a great community of and network of really blessed people and families and many other people I've been able to get to know that it's just amazing to be able to also connect. For instance, Jim, it was really interesting to be able to connect with Jim and Sarah because she didn't really know who he was too well, and it was good for her to be able to connect with someone in a way that I think has some kind of that it's reputable and that I've looked up, I've been able to have the honor to work closely with him for a while, and it's something that I think is a real privilege for her to have been able to get together with him, and he had a good time talking with her about a lot of the background between just basically just every from what we were interested in kind of getting to know about her from her background and kind of what how she is by association connected to some people and the work that she's done. And so it was something that Jim's really well known for his investigative work into a lot of parapolitical issues. We just came upon the 53rd, I think, or 54th, perhaps, anniversary from the assassination of JFK.
Right, yeah.
And he wrote a book called Crossfire that was groundbreaking, and it basically became this movie, or utilized for the purposes of a movie come to be known as JFK, which was made by Oliver Stone.
Mm.
And so, Jim knew Oliver Stone, and it was really kind of interesting because they got to work together on that, and we were just at a conference, and that's where she got to meet Jim. Basically, we were at this conference for a JFK assassination.
Yeah, she told me about
sort
that.
of an exhibition, and there were a lot of really reputable people there. Roger Stone was also there, Bar McClellan, the Babushka lady, Beverly Oliver Maskey, and many other people. But anyway, it was really neat for her to kind of see, some of the speakers. But really, Sean Stone was also there, and he presented on his new book, The New World Order, and that was a really fascinating presentation. And of course, Sean is Oliver's son.
Yeah.
And so Jim and Sean, have some work experience together. They had some things that they were looking to do, and so it was really neat to be able to have sort of a mutual connection there as well. Because sure, and it was interesting to have everyone in that same context there, and so she got to meet Jim, and we later on convened for just an informal interview. It was about, in total, I think, an hour long. We'll probably cut it to maybe one or maybe two shorter segments, but we'll have that out very soon. I'd like to be able to just make note that it was a real honor to be able to have that done at Jim's personal home, and he's very hospitable, and that for anyone that isn't familiar with his work, I suggest you look into Jim Marrs and maybe find some books of his on Amazon or something if you're feeling inclined to read up on his work. But if anything, he is, I think, a real innovative mastermind of the word when it comes to his art as a literary publicist. He's an author, he's a journalist, he researches things so articulately with citing and reference to anything that he references is basically substantiated. It's profound that some people blow off some of these topics like conspiracy theories just because it's a pop culture meme. It's like, it gives people the impression that it's just a joke, there's nothing to it, and we ought to laugh at it. And when, unfortunately, there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that people are utterly oblivious to and won't bat an eye about. But it's incredible. He doesn't consider himself a conspiracy theorist. He says he deals in conspiracy fact, which a conspiracy is to conspire, as in two factions looking to conspire with or either against each other in some way, and it's something that has been enacted upon all throughout history. It's just people aren't really privy to that in a way that I think is allows them a sense of tolerance beyond that's just a nonsense conspiracy theory. And so I think that there's a lot to what's been going on. A lot of things that I think Sarah makes reference to can be pointed out in some effective work that you can see. She often talks about past lives and things like that, and we can see that our connection with spirit lends us insight into the realm beyond the scope of time, linear time. We can traverse the realms into the past and possibly the future and gain some foreknowledge of events to come and timelines and all of these things that really we try to use to explain or understand what we can maybe experience in the etheric. And so when we delve into our potential past life experiences, things like this, we find that we often relate to these prehistoric and often antediluvian worlds of Atlantis and ancient Egypt and things like that. And I think that it really helps the collective subconscious build the opportunity for us to really tap into that on a greater level than ever, simply because there are more people, I think, now willing to connect with that than in many cycles, it seems. And so I'm interested in seeing that with a lot of the developments through our sophistication here in the material realm, that we will be able to really have a greater undertaking in pursuing these sort of mysterious elements, these echoes of our past, of what we connect with spiritually, and then what we're discovering physically, are really coming to a bind where I think over the next half century that it will be dealing with some interesting aversion to the world that we are integrating ourselves in, with transhuman type thinking and transhumanistic values being more well integrated into society every day. And so we have to be considerate that we often experience a lot of these spiritual, multidimensional facets of our life in a way that we attempt to interpret them through a particular scope that we try to be expressive of, and we try to use a form of language as a vessel to convey it with others. And there's so much that's lost in translation that it can be very distorted unless we have clear communication. We've found a way to make it effective and practical in society. And that's really, I think, what the focal point is of the work that I think we're going to be doing with Sarah, is to helping to make it all very practical, to make it something that people can see and watch and feel more or less than just an observer, but more so an interactive participant with. I'm a part of that. I can do that. It's something that I'm helping to collectively enact upon myself, and it's something that's inviting. It's welcoming. It has to be a form of honoring what can be done for the most broad range and spectrum of people to act upon it. So I think it's going to be really exciting to see. So I'm looking at our format again. I think is just going to consist of a lot of different segments in our series of multidimensionality. Being multidimensional consists of many aspects of our life regarding health, nutrition, detoxing, food, supplements. If you're eating high vibrational food, it's going to affect your overall being. If you're eating lower vibrational food, if you're eating food with a pH balance that's acidic, if you're eating things like fast foods, or you're ingesting frequencies in certain oils, or you're eating and consuming all of these other things, you have to be more conscious about what you're indulging in, because that's one of the key things I think about being more aware is going through the understanding of what it is that's taking place, and then moving from that to having some kind of response to it, having some kind of way to be active about making some kind of intention with what's going on, whether you're trying to understand more about a particular area that you're invested in, or it has something to do with your health. I think it's really important that you have to consider what areas people in the wide variety of the majority that we have that they utilize, on a pretty daily basis. And it's unfortunate because, like we were saying earlier, most people are socially engineered to live a certain way, to do certain things, to have a certain outlook on life. And unfortunately, a lot of people conform to that, and it's hard for them to break the mold and really, let's say someone, for instance, really enjoys their art of, let's say in this case, just literally painting and making canvases and things like that. Well, it might be something that they feel very connected to and passionate about spiritually and however else, but it might not be paying the bills, for instance. And so they get drowned up in a world that is commercialized, and they never get to touch their art again. And that was their only therapeutic form of, you could say, connection, Zen, whatever it is that they utilize their medicine. It was something that they connected with. If they get so repressed and that they can't utilize that form of therapy, then it does actually manifest for them physically as an ailment. It's something that we can see that stress is built up in the body. We interact with cancerous cells in a way that I think no prior civilization has, and I think it has a lot to do with our interaction with the frequencies, the synthetic frequencies that we're introducing into society. The pharmaceutical industry is riddled in all kinds of mysterious frequencies and chemical compounds that most people will never take the time to understand. I think microbiology is probably one of the most fascinating facets of science, yet most people will never even touch a book on any kind of chemistry, because it seems like who cares. But it's really interesting when we consider the chemical elements. Essentially, however we're attempting to interpret them, we're utilizing to make an assessment of the overall spectrum of vibration that material forms take place in, ultimately being everything that we produce pharmaceutically as a form of alchemy. I mean, pharmacy, from what I gather, is an interpreted translation of the Greek sorcery. And I think that it's really interesting to consider that it really is, in some way, if you know what you're doing, a master alchemist works in frequency, works in the span of what kind of chemical compounds can be fused in a way that allow for other properties to emerge. And so what you have in the pharmaceutical industry and many other things, food is an alchemy, everything's alchemy, but in the case of pharmaceuticals, what kind of detriment it has on us rather than regenerative qualities. It's something that keeps people sick for the most part, rather than
Yeah, I mean, most people,
allows for healing to take place.
most people don't know about natural medicines. They think that taking natural medicines is weird, or they don't work, or they don't even look into a lot of alternative medicines. I think it's very easy for people to just pop a pill when they have a headache, or pop a pill when they're not feeling well, because that's what people are engineered to do, and so they don't look into alternative therapies and alternative medicine. I think that's a big problem with society today.
Well, yes, I think it's ironic. We call it alternative medicines,
Yeah.
when really it's the traditional medicine. And I think that's really kind of a cultural mishap. It's unfortunate now that we have to resort to calling alternative medicine that, because it's not. It is medicine. It's the original medicine. It's our natural medicine. It's something that we've been using this whole time, up until this, the last few centuries. Has any kind of advent in microbiology or any kind of molecular chemistry made any kind of endeavor of that nature to sophistication that allowed us a sense of making food, manufacturing pills and vitamin supplements, manufacturing things that really you wouldn't see on such a public scale up until like the last century. And it's really kind of incredible to think that we live in a generation now where most people in the next 100 years will be so completely, I think that a lot of things are potentially going to happen, but it just seems like with the direction we're going, we'll have a great division in our spectrum of what we consider life, what we consider what being conscious means, what consciousness really is, and what it can really be defined as, because we're pushing the envelope as a an overall collective. And I think that it's important that we all are contributing to that in some constructive way, in some way. And so I think it's important to be considerate about the skills that we all possess, because obviously we are all very incredibly, a unique fractal of the greater source. And I think that it's important to always bear that in mind. And it's something that I think is really important to consider, that when we're able to utilize our unique abilities toward the overall collective, we're offering ourselves for something that's honorable. It's got a greater notion of selflessness than is something that's more of the case of trying to gain reverence. And we're looking to honor community by respecting everyone, by respecting the consideration of perspective. How do we enact upon our life in a way that accommodates for everyone? How do we see, some people say, how do we see God in everything that we do when we interact? And I think that's something that's notable to live by, whether you're religious or not. I think it's something we have to be reminded of constantly as a conscious, waking, physical and spiritual and everything else multidimensional being.
Yeah.
We have to embody all of that in a way that's practical. And I think that's the biggest part of what can give us the best outlook on our life.
I think it's also difficult with when you go into things like alternative therapy, alternative medicine. A lot of them are like banned, by the government or, the medical boards and such, because they're not certified or whatever. They're not tested, and they're not. They're made out like they don't work, and so, the big pharma, I guess, is taken over the whole medicine area, and they have enough money to stop a lot of alternative medicines from even making it to market. If I mean, there are alternative therapies and medicines out there, but it's not as big as it could be, and it's not helping as many people as it could help. Basically because they're being stopped by the people with the money, I guess, big pharma and the governments and things like that. So it's almost like a losing battle in a lot of ways with alternative therapy and alternative medicine.
Well, it's really important to consider that, of course, as you're suggesting, that there is a dominant sort of predisposition that medicine is, you go to the doctor and you just kind of feed, out of whatever they prescribe. And it's something that most people don't really know more than, I guess this is what I should do, and they follow through with it, because if they don't, they might feel like something bad could happen. And so if anything, more people are waking up to, obviously, that there are alternatives and that there are natural remedies. I find great respect in traditional Chinese medicine and forms of energy work known as qigong and other internal alchemical arts that allow for much of what we're understanding energetically to be made practical. It's something that I think a lot of the Eastern cultures have really utilized the whole time, and it's just become more commercialized lately in our Western cultures. But it's just a matter of, I think, well, what can we continue to do to make it effective and practical efficiently? And so I'm honored to be able to connect with a lot of great people that are inherently connected to those traditions. And some people, for instance, they talk about Reiki, and Taj, you've probably heard and worked on, with Reiki practitioners, and you've probably, worked in energy with yourself. And I think everyone's kind of getting the nomenclature Reiki as this sort of energy type magical healing or something, to in the most mundane sense. I think it's something that's sort of catching on, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think most people don't really understand it though. I mean, things like Reiki and aromatherapy, that type of thing, and Chinese medicine. I think a lot of it maybe is ignorance in a way. People don't want to learn about these therapies. They don't understand them. Um, but once you start looking into these things, even things like acupuncture, people think sticking needles in your body, how can that you know heal you? But they don't understand things like energy, energy points in your body, and they don't look into it in that aspect. So I think a lot of it is like people don't look into it. They don't want to know about it. Um, and in a way, it is ignorance, I would say. But I don't know what you think about that.
Well, I think that it's interesting. We have to remember that there are always going to be the people who, when they eat food, they don't care to think about what's actually happening when it goes down through them into their body. It's something that they know that something's going to happen. It'll take care of itself, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting to think that we can only do so much to have people help themselves. That's really what it's about. Is I think we could always try to forcefully try to get someone to do something, whether we think we're right. However, you know, adamant we are about something, whether it's from eating or whatever, lifestyle, anything. If we think we're so right about it, we can only do so much to try to force someone into it, and maybe that can be a driving force for some people. But a lot of the time, I find that it's important to allow people to. I mean, I love the notion of knowledge and wisdom transference. I think that's one of the greatest parts of how we've been able to keep so many things inherently connected this whole time. All these cycles of humanity is through knowledge and wisdom transference through a lot of things. But I think it's really important to consider that when we do connect in a way that allows us a sense of insight into some kind of subject, um, it's really important to, I think, do follow up and to research the field, to investigate, to look into um, other perspective. To look at things that challenge your own thinking, that challenge your own ways of what you thought you were content with, and in a way that you can really push the limits. Not to do anything crazy. I'm not advocating anyone go do anything insane, but just the notion that we're so confined as a society to think and to not even uh, be tolerant enough to even be in the presence of something or someone that represents something outside of traditional formal society. And so when we talk about a lot of these issues of how energy moves and transfers through channels of light and manifests into the physical realm, and how we're able to understand consciousness in a way that's connected with that, whatever form it takes, we
Mm.
find that there's so much taking place beyond the scope of our physical being that most people uh, will never really, I think, on a grand scale, unless something takes place that catalyzes that, are, I think most people are really in the dark in a conventional way because of lifestyle implementation and conditioning. And I think that's a big part of what we were discussing earlier about how we have such a very specifically oriented form of environment that people come through into this life, and things like the education system, things like poverty, things like the economic clashing, and issues with the overall direction of especially in the Western world. Here in the U.S., it's there are such standards that are made to be just a staple in typical upbringing, that you have to think a certain way, you have to be of a certain heritage, and it really, I think, restricts the ability for people to grow in a way that's outside the scope of normalcy, that allows them to organically tap into their connection in spirit or consciousness in a more sacred or divine way. And so when we do tap into our multidimensionality, I think it's important to realize that it's not, I wouldn't make it analogous to the overall enlightenment that, let's say, people think that Buddha, for instance, had this just enlightenment and then everything was just completely, just different realms. And I think it's really important to note that while I'm not trying to negate that in any way, it just seems like when we experience something enlightening in our own life, we have to remember that we exist in a realm of vibration and resonance. And our resonance isn't just in this form, just a timed duration, but we allow our resonance to sustain. And so if we're not sustaining our vibration or resonance, then it diminishes. And this is exactly what happens in music. You have to think about a vibration. If you play a note on a piano, it resonates. If you let go of that note, it will the note will diminish and then eventually fade away. And so we are those we are the hand that's playing the note, but we are also the note, and we are the piano. It's like there are so many collective compounded facets to being multidimensional. You're consciously activating and you're navigating your vessel. You're not just navigating your physical vessel, you're navigating your overall being in a way that compensates for the overall environment that you're in a way that you can energetically interact remotely if you need to. You can use your thought forms as a way to convey something that, if you can really tune in, that allow a greater effect on a situation, maybe not necessarily as manipulation, but as a form of connection and conveying to basically practice and make effective your non-physical values and traits as well. And I think that's the big part about being multidimensional, is embodying all of those different facets of, let's say, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience. There's clairolfaction. They say that every sense has an expanded or extended sense rather than just a sixth sense. And I think that our overall consciousness is only confined specifically to the vessels that we really experience through this vessel, and that we have the ability. I think the human form has been an ongoing sort of experiment to better utilize our multidimensionality and to experience the expanded realms beyond the physical. I think that's kind of what we are able to do in utilizing certain aspects of our chemistry makeup and our heart and mind connection, our heart's magnetism. I think that we're a conductive vessel. I think that there's a lot more to what we perceive ourselves as just these sort of fleshy primates. I think that there's a lot of alchemy taking place in just the human form alone, and that we have the capacity as just physical beings have the capacity to embody a great connection to spirit, to the divine, and we allow our vessels the opportunity to host that. And that's sort of I think the analogy of saying that the divine is within us, the kingdom of heaven is within us, that we are a temple that houses the divine, and all of these things that have been allegorically portrayed throughout histories and mythologies over the world, I think are all in narrative to be the greater expression of that we are a play of consciousness interacting with reality collectively, remembering ourselves and experiencing ourselves. And I think that that's the greatest notion that I take away from all of that. And so it's something that I'm considerate of, and I do what I can to honor all paths and all forms of life. And I see that Sarah is also very resonant of that as well, and I honor that in her because she's very ambitious to be expressive and enact upon her multidimensional qualities too. So I think that's really awesome. And I hope that people are looking forward to that. We have a lot of great material that we have worked on, and I think it's going to be fun for people that are interested in her work and what she does. I hope she's off to a well recovery. We're sending her good energy for anyone out. Be sure to keep that in mind and at heart, because this is really supposed to be dedicated to Sarah, and sharing about some of the things that we're going to be doing here.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important that that anyone interested in following her up that knows how to do that, just either look into it or just stay tuned. And I know Todd has got some great work going on, and so it's really interesting to see what all is coming about, and it's something that we're excited to be able to collaborate with. And like I said, I'm glad to be able to do sharing. It's a great honor to be able to connect with you here, C to C. So
yeah. I mean, Sarah does talk a lot as far as the multidimensional aspect. She talks a lot about, she doesn't believe in the whole, I guess, the New Age movement, the whole love and light and everything's wonderful and great, and that's she says it's sort of a bit of a trap, really, in that you have to incorporate all aspects. There is I guess the darker side of multidimensionality. You have to be aware of the dark energies, dark forces, and if you're not aware of them, then you can't protect yourself or counteract against that thing. I think a lot of the stuff in the New Age sort of movement, they tend to concentrate on the whole love and light and positive energy and everything, and they ignore the other aspects. And I think the good thing about Sarah is she does consider that as well as part of the multidimensionality part of what she does. She does talk about that as well, about the darker side of things as well. And the whole world isn't all love and light. You have to consider and look into the darker side of things. I don't know, what do you think about that?
Well, I think it's really something I'm definitely considerate of. I actually have had the great honor to work under a lineage holder to the primal Taoist disciplines, and the Tao is typically, as some people know, the way is essentially just that, as it encompasses all the duality, the light and the dark. It's not something that we can just say, I just want to focus on the light. And I think that, it's interesting to see, you made a good point about how people are not willing to just, they don't look at both, or they just want to see what they want to see. And it's something that hinders their ability to perceive beyond that. And really, I think multidimensionality is, in the fullest sense, you have to understand that there wouldn't be dimensionality if there weren't these degrees of contrast and dynamics that we could experience, ranging from what people like to say is positive and negative, but that's just just two extremities. We're dealing with a wide range of things, human emotion that is such a incredibly profound experience. All the things from fear and torment and suffering to bliss and joy and happiness, and everything in between is such an extremely dynamic and diverse form of that experience.
I think a good way of putting it, in multidimensionality, there's like black areas, there's white areas, and there's grey areas, and you have to incorporate all of that and be aware of all of it.
I think that it's definitely something that a lot of cultures have attempted to portray in times past, and I think that a lot of times when we interact with that, people feel connected. We feel a sense of spiritual reminiscence, spiritual resonance with some of these ancient cultures when we see that they're utilizing things like symbolism, imagery, and sacred geometry. I think these are really fascinating because they invoke within us something primordial, just like mantras, and being able to recite ancient frequencies in a way that invokes some form of vibration or energy. And it's really incredible because that allows us I find, to tap into a greater state of consciousness, and we can embody, I think, a vast spectrum of values. And so, really, to find that we limit ourselves to just things like, just the love and light, and only focusing on that. While I understand the intention behind that, it's also naive. I think it's also something that people are, not practical people. I think it's really important to consider that when you have such a sensational platform of media like the internet and how viral social media is, it's easy to have a virtual presence that emits this conceptualized sense of self. It's you could call it a residual self-image, and then what your realistic self really is and what you're actually doing to portray that. I think it gives people the notion that they are certain people, or I'm sorry, they are certain ways that they do certain things, when really it's just they're just making an effect to try to portray it as such. And I think it's important to remember that the whole concept of spirituality is it's all a parody, because it's just our attempt to try to understand our connection with Source and the divine and the greater realms, and we just utilize our language and communication barriers here in such a way that we can make sense of it together collectively. And so I find it really interesting because people do things really spiritual religiously and are very adamant and are very I think it's almost kind of funny, because I think it's important to find humor in some of the issues. And I just had a segment a while back I did with J.P. Sears, who some of you might know that are listening, and he does these ultra spiritual comedy videos, which are kind of funny to a lot of people who don't know anything about spirituality and things like that. And so he's a great guy, and I think it's a good example about the seriousness that goes behind a lot of lifestyles, even within the spiritual, the New Age, and these awake and the conscious communities, whatever you want to label them. I think that it's important to remember that, it's important to humble yourself with a sense of just presence and well-being, and just to being active in the dimensions that you feel best suit you for the circumstances in a way that are most effective. And so, for instance, I don't think it necessarily means that we should, it's not about being a certain lifestyle that necessarily is, trying to force people into eating a certain way or however like that, but really it's just advocacy through example. It's something we set upon ourselves as a gauge in our own experience to find how it reflects in our outer world, our external perception, because everything I find, you could say as above, so below. I think everything internally is expressed externally to some collective degree that we are all sort of consciously existing within and co-creating, so to speak. And I think that it's something that we utilize by interaction with vibration. And so when we're considerate on the level of the playing field, so to speak, I like to say about our world here, we're in the field, not just the physical world, but our environment. All of these, this continuum of dimensions, I think is really incredible. I am really fascinated by a lot of fringe sciences and quantum mechanics and issues that deal with multidimensionality. I advocate a multidimensional, a universal model that really helps to better convey the nature of our reality in a way that does compensate for our conscious embodiment in the realms of and dimensions of all these different channels and frequencies. And so it's really important to be considerate of that, because when people aren't, like you were saying earlier, you have this dynamic contrast and people living in this supposed 3D world, and then not being able to expand beyond that whenever they interact with something that's just completely out of that realm. And so I think a lot of people have that kind of predisposition, but many are waking up to it more than ever. I don't really ascribe to the whole New Age movement per se, but I think that it you know, in any sense, is you know, it's there. It's in people's pop culture subconscious. It's in the back of people's minds. I think it's subconsciously affecting more people than ever, you know, before, and in some kind of constructive way. And if anything, you know, I can respect it for that. But overall, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about you know, certain values and different philosophies and things like that, because I don't really think that anything considered new age is really new, other than that we're newly putting things that aren't new to use, you know. And so
I think
I think it's just something about that.
a lot of what we are learning and what we are finding out about is just stuff that we've forgotten already. You know, that we've forgotten. You know, you can talk about like past lives and the knowledge that we have within us. A lot of things I've learned over the past few years, I sort of already knew in a way. I already knew about it, and I just needed reminding in a way. I don't know if you feel the same way about that.
I think that's it. I think that everything we interact with on the physical medium that we all collectively are a part of here and beyond, I think that we are just that. We are reminders. We when we interact with something that spiritually resonates with us, we are essentially finding a connection that's ineffable. It's beyond the physical. It transcends the barriers of time, space, and language in a way that, you know, most other things can't. And when we have an indication that reaffirms us of that, it's a beautiful thing. You can call that a spiritual experience, but I don't think that you really have to put words to it. And I think it's something that we really have a great time trying to portray here on in this world. And I think that it's something that most people don't really think about. But if you really reflect upon how ironic it is, you know, whenever we have an experience that feels like there's a past life in Egypt or Atlantis or and many of these ancient
things
places.
like deja vu, you know, like
Exactly.
deja vu. Yeah.
I think that you know, at first you think, wow, that's such a great experience, and you can hold that, resonate it within you internally, and I think it's good to do that, and it can be therapeutic. But what's really great is when you can sense the connection in the external world, when you can find more reference, more things that give you reassurance, more things that give you a direct confirmation and affirmation. It's reaffirming to find these things over and over. They're like constant reminders. I like to call them indicators. There might be numbers. I've liked, I know I really like to look into numerology, and you know, just many different symbols and images all throughout history are very resonant of that for a lot of people. And I think that there's something to it. You know, we're as conventional people not really too privy on that, but I think internally, because people don't want to be provocative, you know, everyone in some way I think connects with something like that, but most people don't ever share about it. And it's just because of the societies that we live in now and how unfortunately there aren't too many venues to really be openly expressive about that. Obviously there are some, and that's how we're able to talk about these things here now and with a lot of people that are interested in them. But for the most part, that's not the mainstream way of thinking, and you know, it might never be. However, I think that's kind of always been the case. That's why there have been mystery schools, you know, these teachings that have been passed down through wisdom traditions and kept very, you know, sacred for the sake, you know, for the sake of basically not distorting it, not being able to dilute it by just sharing it openly, because it has a lot to do with being in tune. If you alter the teaching, you know, it might not necessarily be bad. It just changes, I think, the overall discipline and the source of the expression. And so you see a lot of these things that we're doing, that you know, the languages that we're using now on this show to communicate with are just long rivers of you know, it's just small, actually just small streams of much longer rivers from much earlier before, you know. And I think it's a good example to see that we are rooted through our connections here with imagery, with allegory, with symbolism, with mythology, and I really admire all of those things. I respect them to a great degree, in as much as that I feel a spiritual resonance with them, and I find that it's important that we find ourselves embodied here. We can find that we might have had all of these lives in Egypt or South America, Peru, as a Mesoamerican, or even a Mesopotamian, maybe something in Sumer, things like that. I find it really all fascinating.
Yeah.
But we also have to remember that it's important that we live as ourselves now, and it's important to embody what we feel collectively here in our vessels currently. And I think that we are simultaneously embodying energies from the past, but we also have to remember, for instance, that we are practical in a way that is effective. And so I think it's really important, because you see a lot in, if I use the term New Age, communities or circles of people that do channelings, that do things like this, that access information. And I've met many different people, and I know a lot of different people who basically interact in those realms, and I think everyone does. I think it's something that I connect with as well. I produced a sort of manuscript of material as one of my first publications, all completely based off of mostly channeled information, and it's not something I speak openly about too often, but just as an example, I find that it's important that we all utilize that, and then instead of just going inherently upon that, we follow up and we take it to the step further of following up with reference, giving ourselves the time to find context in the relational disposition of what we feel spiritually, and then how it is reflective in our world. So let's say we feel like there's some past lives in these different places. Well, there's some more tangible than other ways of referencing material. A lot of people write on these things. A lot of people can go to ancient sites and find either areas or artifacts, and many of these different things that I think do invoke a sense of ancient primordial remembrance in our soul and our spiritual consciousness. And I think that when we embody some of those things, they might not necessarily serve us in a way that makes sense in this paradigm. And so it's like you have to be practical with what comes through into your vessel, because it's really important to be, in my mind, to be effective in when you're dealing with anything in a public or professional manner, and not necessarily that it has to be anything spiritual or New Age or anything like that. But to me, I guess as a a sociable person, I think it's important to be able to hold space in a light that essentially allows for the greatest range of communication to be made effective. And so that's something I always keep in mind, because you can try to explain something about a spiritual concept that you feel very passionately about to someone else, and through such degrees of language and communication, they might end up just having something triggered within them that has nothing to do with what you explained, and they're interpreting it through a completely filtered lens of whatever. And so it's really important that we keep that in mind when we try to explain, because I think there's a lot of indication that people have about feeling connected with different ways, but it's also synonymous with what you described earlier about people having this notion of disregarding certain ideas about our reality. Let's say, like you were saying, people want to focus on the good and not really the bad. Well, you could, in as much, say the people that like to talk about their past lives as royalty and of like high status, you could easily say that, well, are they also at the same time, are they neglecting to acknowledge, in a joking way to make light of it, but are they failing to acknowledge their lives as lowly underlings and peasants as well? Or is it just that we like to see the glimmer and the glint of the stone? I think it's really important to consider all aspects, because sure, we might have had the most extraordinary past lives, and I think that it's important to embody the collective consciousness of that in our own right, but to also be considerate that while we feel connected to a sense of self and identity, that and in some sense this may be my philosophy, but that overall we are beyond that sense of self, and that whatever lives that we've interacted with are merely forms of experience that we might be able to embody and tangibly interact with through some form of consciousness in our greater collective consciousness, which essentially is formless. It's formlessness, and I think that's what we dissolve into. We are, as dissolute beings, we are not one. We are nothing. We are we are the infinite. They were that which has no form, but is always form simultaneously. So I am interested in those kinds of paradoxes, but I think it's important to keep that in mind beyond our scope of past lives, that we are also beyond that as well.
Yeah, I tend to find I connect to certain places and certain people who come into my life either for good reasons or bad reasons. And it's like you have a connection. I mean, like with Sarah, I've only known her not even a year probably, but we have like some kind of connection, like we know each other already, and I've had the same sort of connection with other people that I've met, and you could say Sarah explained it to me like part of a soul family or something like that, or that we've met in a past life or previous incarnation, or with places that you've been to, you feel like that deja vu feeling that you've been there before and you know your way around but you've never been there, and that type of aspect. I don't know if you've had any type of like connections with people or places in that same way.
Yes, I feel like unfortunately I haven't traveled as much as I would love to, but all of the places I really admire, I do have some kind of deep affinity for in a spiritual sense. And of course, I have met a lot of incredible people that I think, to me, they are indications of that, that sort of spiritual, as you put it, your soul group, soul family, spiritual resonance that you have as a collective union. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that, because I think that's the essence of all philosophical teachings, is that we essentially can find that if we allow ourselves in the most grand sense, we can find that everyone has the potential to do that within each other. But in a more personal sense, I think obviously because of the dynamic variety of beings that we are, I mean, that's one of the things I think we have to look at as a sense of extremity. People want the utopian world where it's all, new age, love and light, and everything's peaceful. There's nothing wrong with that, but you have to realize that in the sense of how differently people connect and how vast our field is here to interact with, the medium through which we are interacting in all these dimensions, I think is important to be considerate of, because you have to see that anytime we come through with a spiritual experience that is reflected in our external world, it's important to know. I think it's important to keep that as a indication that something is being reassured to you in a way that really only you can understand, because that's your interpretation of reality. And I think people use the terms that we do, like past life and things like that. I think that we connect with past lives, but I also think that those are just things that we try to utilize to interpret our experience spiritually and or beyond that. And so I think it's something that we also see as that transcends our physical confinement in a way that sometimes we can't seem to explain very well, at least in this language. I think there are a lot of great ways to be able to express some things which obviously are more philosophically oriented or spiritually oriented, in a way that we don't really do that as a society. There's not really, I for instance, I really admire sharing the greeting and salutation namaste, because I think it really connects with a sort of conveyance that most terms don't have, if you can really tune in and understand what's being conveyed. Some people can say that just means hello or greetings, and that's fine. But I think when you can be expressive of a message such as the divinity within me honors and recognizes the divinity within you, we are essentially one, we are the same, and I honor you, and I can convey that to you just like I did, but when you have a phrase or a saying that essentially embodies that, that to me is profound. We don't really have a lot of words like that and or phrases in the English language that help to convey some of those types of uh, enigmas. And I think that it's really important to proactively do what we can to better ourselves, better our language and our communication, to more effectively share spiritual reference and context in a uh, an effective way. Because that's the thing, is there's so much jargon, there's so much um, conceptualization and all this rhetoric that is so lofty. It's so ineffective. It's not directional. It's aimless, and it's like, what do we do? It sounds great. I'm glad I just listened to it. Now what? It's like, got to go back to work or something, and you have to just completely abandon what it was because it's not grounded. I think when you can embody all of the aspects that you feel, then it's kind of like walking the talk. If you want to be able to have strong, definitive claims, and I think some people do, and it makes for a big impression in the conscious, new age type community, alternative communities. I'll just say that. And not to say there's anything wrong with that, because they're just utilizing ego in that way. But I think that it's something that you have to take note of, because when we embody all of our multidimensionality, it might not mean that we're necessarily, feeling divine and just regal and all of these things. But it's just we're surviving, we're living practically, and we're thriving. And we're moving beyond just the mere confines of just getting by. It's we're able to be an open, expressive, free, conscious being that's illuminated and that has attained a sense of liberation. And that liberation might not necessarily be, in specific ways, but it's something that you can find allows for people to achieve their greatest compassion. And I think that's really what links us all together, is that connection at the heart center, and how we connect in the overall source. Whether you collapse all the multi-dimensions, multiple dimensions down to the duality, you collapse that down to the singular source, the Advaita, and I think that you have essentially the primordial concept of we are all one. We are all that which is, and the I am, and the primordial form of consciousness, which to me is the interwoven thread of all things.
Mm. I think we've got maybe like 10 minutes left of the show. I don't know if you want to cover how you and Sarah got together, and if you want to talk a bit more about. I know you do a lot of other things as well. Not just the video blogs, but you do a lot of other things. If you want to talk a bit more about that, and where people can get in touch with you as well to find out more about all this that we're talking about at the moment.
Sure thing. And again, I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you here and your listeners. And I'll just briefly mention a few things that anyone interested in Sarah's work can help to be proactive about. If they'd like to, I'd suggest following up with this interview, or maybe getting together with her, or if Taj, and or if you'd like to send me any information, we can go into that as well. But basically, I'd like to say that we are considering, like I said, the format of having our series of multidimensionality, being multidimensional, basically how you can make it practical and effective in your everyday life, not just virtual presence or public appearance or anything like that, but how you can utilize basic practices and applications that help to improve your overall well-being and motivate you to utilize your art, passion, craft, things like that in a way that I think is important for anyone to be connected with. And so we're going to have segments on health, nutrition, food, eating well, consuming the vibrations that your body needs, that your energy body needs, that all forms of your multidimensionality need holistically. We're going to discuss some intentional forms of medicine, like jewelry, how stones and crystals and things like that can really help to improve your overall well-being, as well as other areas of utilizing energy work and various medicines that are supplemental as well. And so we'll be sure to hopefully get Sarah on whenever she's feeling better, hoping she has a quick recovery. Mm-hmm. And then she, of course, can do much better justice to sharing about a lot of the things that she's really wanting to be able to be expressive and portray in some of these segments. But it's really about going out and experiencing it, being a part, making it interactive, being proactive about it, making it effective, and showing all the forms that she likes to do, and then also some of the things that she'd like to be able to be more involved with, and that are give others an opportunity to tell about their work and things like that as well. It's a lot of fun to be able to connect and go to these events. And so for anyone that's interested in any of the work that I do, I manage a community organization network called Vortexas, and of course that's a play on Texas. It's VORTEXAS, and of course I am fascinated by all of the amazing energy vortexes everywhere I go, which are pretty much the people and the places and the events, and so I'm fascinated by a lot of the spiritual confirmations that I think are, like we were discussing, Taj, how you can have these really profound personal experiences that you get confirmation of, and then you see indications of externally. I think that's really a big part of my direction in life, and I think that I do connect with a lot of those realms, and it urges me to pursue it in a tangible way, that I like to go out into the field. I like to host events. I like to get involved in the subjects that I feel consciously connected with in a way that I'm doing my part to contribute. And so we like to get into areas about consciousness, health and wellness, scientific anomalies, energy and metaphysics, and even strange stuff like paranormal phenomena, parapolitical agendas, unknown creatures, and cryptids of cryptozoology, ancient mysteries, and just very interesting philosophy of just many different things throughout time. I'm very interested in as well. But we have productions that we do. We share a lot of interesting information. You can find our website at vortexas.net. That's like Texas, like the state that I'm broadcasting out of right now, but with a VOR in front, VORTEXAS. And so once you see it, you'll see the Vortexas imagery there. But anyway, you can always email me at daniel@vortexas.net. We are currently kind of undergoing some reconstruction on the website, but you can nevertheless go to our video channel on YouTube, which there's a link there. It's just youtube.com/vortexasnetwork. And we also have the Facebook page, and we have Meetup here, locally, that we share all around Texas and a little beyond. And so there's that as well. But we like to share if you're interested in checking out the Facebook page or subscribing to the YouTube. We have videos on all kinds of subjects. I really do a lot of investigative journalism and documentary work with some really high caliber people. I'm really blessed to be able to interact with all of these wonderful beings. I think it's really interesting to have a personal involvement. I think that's sort of my, you could say, if anything, that's where I take my spiritual side of things and I apply it in the real world in a way that I think is reassuring. Every time I get to connect with wonderful people. And of course, connecting with Sarah has been an interesting blessing as well, because I think that it's been very. I think there's a lot of clarity that's been made. I think with a lot of issues that I think with anyone following along with her work or what she's been through, it's really insightful. And we're hoping to give her the opportunity to share that as well. And of course, you're doing a great job here, Taj, of being able to allow for her to have that support too. And I'm really honored to be able to be connected with you in this way, and I look forward to all the opportunities that are to come.
Yeah, we're hoping to have our own show shortly on this channel, on Revolution Radio. We're just going through the process at the moment. And hopefully that should start next month. And you know, you and me will probably be working together closely with video blogs, and we'll be talking about the video blogs on the show. And I'll be doing a lot of stuff. But Sarah's going to be putting me through a detox, and I'll be testing some of the products that you may be talking about on the video blogs, some of the supplements and the diets. And I'm sort of, I guess I'm going to be her guinea pig for a while, in a way. So, I'll be.
Well, just keep in mind that I know she means well, and that she's looking to find some great ways that people can be proactive about their health. And whatever we end up being able to share, we'll have to follow up with and see what you have in mind and what you have going on. It'd be interesting to look forward to.
Yeah, I think it's more for like the regular people out there who don't know much about multidimensionality, diet, supplements, all that type of thing. And I'm learning a lot about it myself from Sarah. And so people don't know what products work, what products don't work, how to take them, and that type of thing. And so you'll probably be covering a lot of that in the video blogs, and in the radio show we'll be sort of expanding on that in a way, when I'll be testing a lot of the products and reporting back as to how effective they are, best ways to take them, and whether to take multiple supplements, multiple vitamins and other methods as well. So hopefully it will be the show will start next month, and we can take it from there really, and work together, and hopefully it'll be a good experience.
Well, that sounds great. I do wish you the best with the endeavors of all the supplements. It will probably be an interesting and dynamic experience. I think that it's something to look forward to, and I'll be glad to stay in touch. And again, I appreciate you allowing me the opportunity to fill for Sarah, and I hope that she is feeling better soon, and that can get back onto sharing her work and things of that nature. So appreciate it.
Okay, and thanks. And just for anybody who wants to see any of my work, I have a YouTube channel, Taj Investigates. If you just type that into YouTube, you'll find my channel. And I also have a group on Facebook called Taj Investigates. And the aspects I look into mostly is for targeted individuals, people who are being targeted, and I'm trying to find solutions for them to how to move on with their lives, really. As a lot of the targeted people, I don't know if you know yourself, but they feel very isolated and alone.
The TIs.
Yeah, TIs, yeah. They feel very isolated and alone, and don't know where to go to reach out for help, and how to seek therapy and basically heal, I guess, and move on with their lives. And so I try.
It sounds like you're doing some good work, Taj, and I definitely send you a blessing in that.
Yeah, I'm trying to do interviews with people, both people who have been through targeting. I don't like using the word Sarah. Is like a super soldier, but a lot of these people who come to me who have been through trauma in their lives, have been targeted, and have to deal with it on their own. So I try and I talk to a lot of these people every day, and try and help them in whatever way I can. Obviously, I'm learning about a lot of this stuff as I go along as well. So I don't really have all of the answers, as it were, but I'm sort of like learning as I go and trying to help these people at the same time. So,
well, you definitely have to keep it up. You guys be sure to check out Taj's YouTube channel and all the other information he's posting around. Thanks, Taj.
Okay, I can hear the music coming in, so that's the end of today's show. Thank you, Daniel, for coming on at short notice, and have a good day, everyone.
listening to Revolution Radio.